last week on the Nicoletti Show. So without further ado, let's welcome Philip to the show. Philip, what is up, man?
My curiosity said, where are the best leads in real estate today? And I started to really look at the stereotype of who my sellers were. Really, I'm a real estate guy, but I ended up becoming a senior living guy because that's where the flashpoint is.
This is going to be the biggest thing in the next 10, 20, 30 years. When I jumped into the probate space, I really went hard after the niche because I knew what was coming.
I do feel like today's kids don't have the same outlook as they did when they were 20 years old. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that works because they live in too big of houses and they don't want to downsize. And that's interesting because that's supply and demand issue again. And so what's going to make them move? Probate.
If you're not focused on the pre-probate and the probate market and what's to come, you're missing out on a whole area because this is probably going to take a third, if not more, of the real estate industry. It's gonna cut right into it. And if you don't learn it now, you're not gonna help yourself because other people are eventually gonna go, well, wait a second. I've heard Al at a probate talk and he's been talking about the silver tsunami since 2017.
If you would have told me 30 years ago there'd be a billboard that says, take care of your grandma and get paid for it, I'm like, no way. And that is actually happening right now. And we need more caregivers. Why does anyone sell a house? We had a baby, we need a bigger house. We got a divorce, we're splitting the house, which never works. Somebody, move into senior living. Like that's a real need, guys. When they come to me, they truly need to sell their house. They're not, we're thinking about selling in the springtime. No, like they have to sell to pay the $6,000 a month on average for care. And so I work with highly motivated families that are trying to get to this solution. And it's a really fun niche and it's not little and it's not in the future, guys. The tsunami is here now, right now. Tonight you're listening to this. If you don't take this seriously, you're going to be buying houses from somebody else that did take this serious. And that's not a threat. It's just, that's the number.
Thanks again so much for taking time out of the day to do this.
Thank you, Al, for having me.
You got it, man. You take care. What a great episode that was with Philip Vincent last week. If you missed that episode, definitely go back and check that out. When Philip was talking about the coming silver tsunami, this is something that is going to be very big in our industry. From mid-2020s, 2025 to 2030, 2040. I mean, this is going to be the biggest generational transfer of wealth in America. And the amount of people, baby boomers, that bought property is going to skyrocket. Those numbers are going to keep on going. And that's why I believe in the probate niche. That's why Philip believes in the senior centers and in that sector. And so this is going to be one of the biggest industries. Go back, check that out, watch it. And of course, you can find all the content on the Al Nicoletti Show. Scan the QR code at the top of the screen right there. And you're going to get everything from probate, all the videos, business tips, anything that we have out there on all the social media platforms. Don't miss it. And tonight, I have one of my great friends that we worked on probates together in Florida, Nick Kamrada. I love seeing Nick. Nick always has so many golden nuggets to drop in the RIAs, in meetings, in shows. And so I really wanted to bring him on because he gives that real life investor perspective on starting, where he's at, building the team, growing the team, and getting through all the messy stuff, right? It's not always about the pretty stuff, but it's the messy stuff. And how do you do these things virtually? So many people are doing deals virtually. He's going to talk about that. And opening thoughts tonight, special announcement. So on Saturday, October 26th, the Jax RIA Trade Show and Conference is happening here in Florida. If you have even considered about scaling your business, leveling up your business, getting into real estate, or you're in the real estate game and you want to learn more, you got to be at this event. Scan the QR code at the bottom right there. That's where you're going to find all the info on Jax RIA's event that's coming up. There's going to be 65 exhibitors there, the greatest in the industry, and we're bringing keynote speakers from all around the country. And we got people like Tyler Austin from REI Sift, Nicole Espinosa, the short sale queen, Gonzalo Corzo from Cash Geeks. I mean, these people have been on the Al Nicoletti Show. And we get to have these people here, April Giuliano, Mark Monroe, and Alex Safakis talking about the whole development in downtown Jacksonville. And yours truly talking about probate. I mean, so many different people. And of course, Glenn Freeman. I could go on. The value is going to be there. Don't miss it. Saturday, October 26th. It's going to be at UNF here in Jacksonville. And there's exhibitor booths and slots, and tickets are selling fast. So you don't want to miss it. And we hope to see you all there. So if you're listening on iTunes and Spotify and you're in some part of Florida, this is a great event to definitely come to. You don't want to miss it. All right, everybody. So I got my pen ready. I got my paper ready. I got energy. 9 o'clock. We're in the studio. Mike and I love it when it's live. Live shows are always such a blast, so fun. We get to interact with everybody. And if you're watching, of course, if you got a question for Nick, we want to hear it. You got a comment, drop it below, and let's rock this thing. Hey, everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their communities that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate, and always bring in the best in the game, whatever industry it is, right? We haven't limited it to just investors or real estate agents, or just really, we're bringing the best of the game to come into the show to share their knowledge. Commercial, branding, Airbnbs, shopping centers. It doesn't matter, because we know that there's a lot of people out there that are going through very different scenarios, business tips, mindset. We want to provide that value to you so you can level up yourself, level up your business on how you can take yourself to the next level. On my show today, my great friend, Nick Kamrada. We've worked on probates together. We've crushed it. We've been through the weird stuff. We've been through the gritty stuff. We've been through the phone calls back and forth on what is going on with this deal, and we've got these things done. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show. Nick, what's up, baby?
What's up, Al? How you doing, man? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I love seeing you every single time, and it was so fun. We got to do the tour in Sarasota. You got to come, share your story, share what's going on. And I learned more about you from that workshop that we did that I didn't know about with you, with working externally with the real estate, working internally with your business. We can learn so much from you. So always happy to have you here, Nick.
Thank
you got to tell everybody, who is Nick Kamrada and how did you get into this real estate game?
Yeah, for sure. So I am Nick Kamrada. I am a real estate investor in Tampa, Florida, and I actually got into the business during COVID because I graduated from college and was taking prerequisites before going into the medical field. But then during the pandemic, I discovered Brent Daniels on YouTube and found out about wholesaling and cold calling, the TTP program. So I just dove in, watched pretty much everything Brent has ever put on YouTube or Instagram or whatever he's got out there, and fell in love with it, and joined his program, joined the TTP program, moved down to Tampa, and just started making phone calls and pulled a list. And 3 months later, got my first deal, and just kind of snowballed from there. And now today we have 9 full-time employees, and we're doing a handful of deals a month, and it's just kind of been building from there.
What was it like just getting on the phones at first? You know?
Oh man, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. I always tell my team I wish I could go back, because I didn't have the call recordings. Now we have call recordings and everything. But I didn't have those when I first started. And I always say, I wish I could go back and listen to my first calls, because I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah, because I'm sure at first, even in my business, when I was just first getting on the phone as a lawyer, talking to potential clients, it's like, you got to get your feet wet. You got to learn some of the rebuttals you're going to get back, some of the things that they're going to say. And you just got to get down in it and take it. Right. And so I'm sure at first you didn't realize that, hey, I'm calling these people. I need to have the sales training to really talk to these people. How long was it before you really started fine tuning that sales process in those phone calls?
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing is Brent and his program, he puts out a lot of things that really, it lays it out very well for you. But when you get on the phone with a homeowner, all of that, especially when you don't have that confidence yet, it's all of that goes out the window, and you're like, shoot, what am I supposed to say next? Or if you've been calling and you've gone through that, would you like to sell your home? No. Would you like to sell your home? No. Would you like to sell your home? No. And then you get somebody that says yes, you're almost shocked. You're like, wait a minute, actually? And then you forget. So it's a lot of failing forward, man. A lot of just having a bad call, getting on to the next one, right? That's how you get better at anything, is just repetition.
Do you remember your first deal?
Yes.
What was that like?
So it actually, funny enough, it was actually a call back, or I'm sorry, not a call back. I called and the owner didn't want to sell the house that I called about, but then in Brent's program, there's the whole, well, do you have any other properties that you might want to sell? And of course, he had another property that he wanted to sell, so got it that way. But yeah, it was super exciting, and I got I think it was set 32,000 for the first deal, and man, that just at that point, that could have been $1 million, right? That could have been $10 million because I had no idea what I was doing. And then all of a sudden it turns into something. You're like, man, this is real. I need to keep going with this.
It's funny how when you ask more questions, you'll get some other answers you didn't expect, right?
Mhm.
So that even happens in my business. At first, you're thinking, hey, it's gonna only gonna be one thing, and then all of a sudden they're telling you about 5 other things that, hey, by the way, when this is done, I got to get you on all these other things. I'm like, well, fantastic. I'm glad we got connected, because tell me about the other things. And so I think people don't realize that sometimes it takes asking those questions and diving deeper into what people are going through. So
And that's really all it is. I mean, the sales process, you can talk about sales processes and trying to, convince homeowners to sell. You're never going to convince a homeowner to sell their property at the price that a wholesaler or an investor needs it to make money, right? You're never going to convince somebody to do that. So the way that you find opportunities is by asking the right questions.
yeah, and what's really unique about you is when you got started, you really were like just all over the place, had no idea what was going on, right? And now you guys have that group. You've built a community over in Tampa with the meetup that happens quarterly, right? And so you've
Mhm.
built connections there. Talk about the importance of having developed that community so that helps elevate either you guys in the business or others around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the motivation originally behind creating that meetup and that community was that I wanted to create a situation where somebody like me, because I moved to Tampa, didn't know anybody in nobody in general, especially not in real estate. I didn't have any experience, right? So I kind of had to bootstrap it one thing at a time, make one connection at a time. But what I wanted to create was an opportunity where somebody could come like me, just to Tampa with no experience, no connections, come to one of our meetups and have everything in one room that they need to get a deal done and to get paid and get started. So that was how that started, and it's been amazing. And yeah, it's very important because it's a lot of people, they try to do this business alone, and that's why it takes them so long to get ahead, is because they're trying to do it alone instead of lean on a community and leverage relationships and other people that can help you get there.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for you guys to plug that tonight on the show. So feel free to tell everybody about the meetup, because that meetup I went to, I was blown away. There had to be 50 plus people there. And the hospitality was amazing. Nick welcomed us. Jared, shout out to Jared out there. I mean, the group itself is fantastic. So if you're over in the Tampa area, make sure you get connected with Nick, because these are the meetups where you can make connections with lenders, with other JV partners, other people that are doing it at a high scale. And it's all about the connection. So that's fantastic, Nick. And plug that, please. Do me a favor. Go for it.
Yeah, TBII. I mean, I follow me on Instagram, or I have links to that. And otherwise, I think it is TBII on Instagram. Yeah.
Love
Check
it.
it. Yeah.
So
It's
Nick,
pretty.
let me ask you this. In terms, we can get into some of the deals, but I think what's really impressive about what you guys have done since you started has been building this team virtually, building this out, not even with people here in the US, but overseas, VAs, and scaling it that way. And I think a lot of people, I know people that get hesitant in saying, "Hey, I want to get into that. I want to start scaling it that way."
Mhm.
How have you built your team? Like, start from the beginning. It was one person, and then how did you know how to get to the next person and start really scaling that internal process in your team?
Yeah, for sure. So the way that I kind of looked at building the business was I, of course, started out doing everything myself, but then as I started getting too busy to do everything, I looked at what are the things that either are the most easily delegated or the most time consuming things, the things that I can delegate first, so that I can focus on the more money making activities, right? Which is going to be when you're starting out, like the only thing to do is cold call, right? Because you don't have any leads. So you got to cold call, you got to get leads. But then once you start getting leads, you're following up with leads, you're going on appointments, you're doing that whole sort, you're doing that sort of thing. But if you have a bunch of follow ups and you have a bunch of appointments that you're going on, well, nobody's calling for new leads, right? So a lot of people, they'll get a lead and then they'll follow up with it, and then they might go on an appointment, and then they find out it's not a lead, or the person declines their offer or whatever, and then they look up and they don't have any other leads, right? So what I did was I just focused on one thing at a time, and then fired myself from each seat as I went. So the first person I brought on was a person to make cold calls. The person actually, I didn't start out with virtual assistants though. My first hire is actually my best friend. I've known him since we were probably 11 years old. I brought him down and basically told him to get, I put him through the same thing. I had him watch everything Brent Daniels put out. I had him go through the whole thing that I did, and then he would just make cold calls all day while I did the follow-ups and I went on the appointments, right? And then after that, once we got too busy for me to be doing the follow-ups and the appointments, then we just started building on from there. So the best way, in my opinion, to build a team is fire yourself from each position as you get too busy to do that position.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you can't do everything, and if you think you can, it becomes overloading, and you don't want to do it, right? You have to start going down a whole list of things that you don't want to do so that you find the right person for it. And we all go through that as entrepreneurs in a scaling business. It's just a matter of time. At what point, when do you get to that point where I don't want to do that part anymore? Right. So who can I find? And it's also really interesting too, when you're an entrepreneur and you're running a business. One skill that I've been able to find that I have is recognizing what that person's role is over time, and realizing where their greatest productivity and potential is versus a role that they may be doing now. So I'm sure you've gotten into that yourself, where you've hired that person, you've passed on that role, but then you're starting to wonder, well, wait a second, maybe this person would be better suited in this role because the productivity level is going to go up. Have you been through that before?
So not necessarily with moving somebody out of a role, but just realizing that not swapping roles with anybody, but maybe I've had people that I brought onto the team that I realized just it wasn't a fit for them, or, something like that. So I went through a handful of, I don't want to say bad employees or anything, but just, wrong butts in the wrong seats is what I like to say, right? So you have to have the right butt in the right seat to make a business go the way it's supposed to go. If you have the wrong butts in the wrong seats, there's going to be problems. So stuff like that, yes. But as far as it's been people that have come into the company and then left it, not necessarily like people moving seats around in that company.
And for you, Nick, what have you found has been the most useful and efficient software that has helped your team be more organized, be more sophisticated with the way you guys are doing deals? Like what have you found is the most effective?
Like, you're talking like a CRM?
Either CRM or the way that you guys are using the CRM with follow-ups.
Okay. Yeah, well, we have a custom version of Podio that it has everything like automated. It'll set your follow-ups and all that stuff. It even sends automated text messages to like our cold leads. We'll have a campaign that it'll send automated stuff to them. So yeah, we use a version of Podio. And then for our dialer, we use the Mojo dialer. And for lists and stuff like that, we use PropStream.
Love it. Okay. So you have it all dialed in. You're good on the internal side. Now let's dive into the deal side, right? The messy stuff that you're seeing. First of all, we got to hear about the story about your primary home, and this unique story. So tell us this cool story about how you were able to take down this one property and then made it your own.
Yeah, for sure. So this the house that I'm in now, we actually. Well, funny story. I used to have a office on the 33rd floor in a building in downtown Tampa, in the Truist building, and it was like a co-working space type thing where you rented a private office, and there was a bunch of companies in there. And one of our neighbors, she was working for a roofer, I believe, but she came to this place to rent it. So she met the landlord at the time to rent the place, but the last owners, or the last tenants, I'm sorry, kind of trashed the place a little bit. And the owner was pretty emotional. She decided she didn't want to be a landlord anymore. And she told the person she wanted to sell. And she was like, well, there's actually a home buying company in my office. So let me connect you with them. And so that's how we got connected. And I was looking at it. And at the time, my lease at my apartment was coming up in the next couple of months. And this house had a backyard and a pool for my dog. And I was living on the 18th floor in a apartment. So it was kind of tough having a dog. So I figured that this was a good setup. So instead of us buying it for a flip or for a wholesale or anything, I actually turned it into a creative finance deal. So I bought it subject to the existing mortgage. So yeah, that's how we got that.
That's awesome. Hey, those deals, they don't come too often, right? And so when you get something like that, it's like, hey, you got to take advantage of those situations. So
Yep.
that's awesome. Nick, what have been some other deals that you can think of that were maybe more on the messy side? And of course, we can dive in on some probate deals that you've picked up. Maybe you've wholesaled, taken them down. Yeah, that's your favorite right there, because they're the best. They're the best.
Of course. Well, it's because I get to work with you on them.
I love that, right? It's always great talking to you on these deals, and we get down in it. What have been some of like the craziest deals that you've seen either recently or maybe in the last year that have been crazy deals, but really awesome deals for your team to do?
Man, well, we're right now, actually, I'm going to be meeting a sheriff to get some squatters kicked out of a place tomorrow. We actually just locked up a house yesterday, and we're going to be going and doing stuff like that. So we've dealt with a lot of squatters. We've dealt with, your crack houses where you walk in and there's just needles on the floor and people passed out in rooms and stuff like that. So you certainly see some pretty crazy stuff. I've seen deals that unfortunately didn't turn into actual paydays for us, but were really, really interesting deals. There was one time we had a property that I don't remember how we got what the lead source was, but it was this company that told us they're out of California. They bought this house at auction 2 years ago and didn't do anything with it. And now they needed to get it off their books. And it was this house in Dunedin. So if anybody in the Tampa Bay area, they know Dunedin's a really, really nice area. And we got it for like $70,000 or something like that. They were like, we just want this off the books. So we're like, are you kidding me? We had it assigned for like $100,000 assignment fee. But then we find out, we go to the property, we send somebody to go check out the property, get pictures and everything. And there's a person living there and they're like, what are you talking about? This is my house. Like I've been here since 2018 or whatever it was. And we're like, she definitely, got evicted because there was a foreclosure on record and everything. Like you can see deed transfer, auction date, all that sort of stuff. But apparently, long story short, they forged a deed, faked this whole thing, never owned the property. So we've dealt with stuff like that. That obviously fell apart. So that was a upsetting time to find out you go from almost $100,000 assignment fee to just nothing because the person that owned the property wasn't the actual owner. We've had ones before where people will rent out houses. That's apparently a big Florida thing too. People just rent out houses that they don't even own. Like they'll advertise a vacant house on Craigslist and like get a tenant in there. And then all of a sudden the owner will come after not being there for a long time. And there's people that are renting it and there's this big confusion. They're sending the money out. So it's a lot of fraud stuff like that. So you definitely see some very interesting stuff, especially when you're going direct to seller. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I don't know if I've told this story on the show, Mike, but I'm thinking there was a case that we saw, Nick, and basically it kind of sounds very similar to the fraudulent deed, where an investor was driving for dollars and eventually saw this property and he thought, hey, let me find out what's going on. Went up to the door, knocked, 2 people answered, and they said, hey, how can we help you? They end up saying, hey, we're tenants. You got to go talk to our landlord. And so he's like, well, who's your landlord? And they said, it's this guy. Well, he's looking at the property appraiser and it lists a lady. So he was like, something weird's going on. Well, fast forward, come to find out, this guy had prepared a fraudulent deed, and this lady that really owned the property, inherited it, had moved out of that house a year before, and left it vacant, had no idea that people were in that house. She freaked out. Investor goes, hey, do you want to sell me your property? She goes, sure. What do we got to do? And then we're suing to quiet the title. And it was crazy. Guy basically showed up with his lawyer at the hearing. They didn't want to deal with it. So very similar to, that kind of crazy case. It happens, right? Like, who would think that this kind of stuff happens? It happens.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's how you get paid, is by solving problems. And a lot of the times, as an investor, at least, you get paid by solving problems, and you get some very, very messy problems when you have distressed real estate and distressed homeowners, because it's either the property itself is going to be distressed or the homeowner is going to be distressed, or a combination of both. So yeah, anybody that's been in the business for a little while, they got some pretty interesting stories. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. And what have been some of your favorite ones with the probates? Because I mean, besides the ones that we've worked on with like there's an auction that we got to get canceled, and then it's like a massive scramble to get that done, and then we're doing the probate. But what have been some of the best deals that you've worked on with probates being involved?
Honestly, I mean, I think some of the best deals that we've had have been those ones where it's a seller that's in a pretty not desperate situation, but like a, hey, I need some help here. Like that one where we delayed the auction. I think we had to search. We had an estranged heir or estranged sister. It was two sisters. We had to delay the auction. Well, here's the thing: is the problem was we had been dealing with this seller for like probably 8 or 9 months before you got involved. But of course, she was taking other offers. She was not our offer was too low for her, whatever. So she keeps getting strung along by investors that didn't know what they were doing. They kept canceling on her. And then all of a sudden she finally comes back to us, and it's like I think a month or 2 months before auction or something like that. And we had found out that there was a probate that needed to be done, and there was an heir that needed to be found. So yeah, it's you definitely see some stuff. But the thing is, when you're able to solve those kind of problems for people, and you're able to get those kind of weights off their shoulders, it's so rewarding. Obviously we get paid, and that's great too, but like it's just great to know that you're helping people in a situation where honestly they probably wouldn't have had another solution, right?
Yeah, and let's break that down for a second too, Nick, because I think a lot of people don't realize that there are these opportunities out there like the one you went through, and we helped stall the auction and then did the probate. Like there's a lot of people out there that face potential auctions, right? Whether it's really the foreclosure one's the big one. They're facing a potential auction. They've waited all the way until the week before, 5 days before. It's not a mystery why it's a pre-foreclosure and probate. I realized that in the last week. It is not a mystery why that property is in pre-foreclosure. And so they're waiting until the last minute. And a lot of investors like, oh, it's just going to go to auction. No, there could be a way to get that auction canceled and removed off the calendar.
Mhm.
Right. But there's got to be an analysis. And that's where investors like Nick are saying, okay, there's a potential deal. It's all about communication and getting down to it and talking to each other. Like, Al, there's a potential deal. It's up for auction in a week. It needs probate. Can we do it? And the savvy ones are going to have that conversation. And Nick sees that there are big potential opportunities. And I'm glad you've seen them and it worked.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And talk to us about the creative financing side. I know you've really enjoyed getting into that. I feel like if you're not wholesaling and you're not taking it down, a lot of people are thinking about a different option like creative financing or doing terms. And I think there was one deal you had talked to me about and said, hey, no, we're not going to take it down. We're not going to do wholesaling. We're going to do creative financing. How have you leveraged that?
Yeah, well, it allows you to make deals with sellers that if you're only giving cash offers, if you're only looking to wholesale properties, like most of the sellers that we talk to, that offer is not going to work for them because they want to go hire an agent and put it on the market and get the most that they can get. But if you understand creative finance and you understand how to talk terms with sellers, well, then it allows you to just transact with more sellers, right? Solve more problems. Like, for example, I have a rental property in Newport Richey that, the seller I met him, the seller lived in Virginia, and he was like driving back and forth, like slowly remodeling the place for like a year or whatever. And then finally decided he wanted to sell. And he was getting offers from a bunch of wholesalers, a bunch of cash buyers that were offering him like, 230, 240, whatever. But he was dead set on my house is worth 300,000. It's worth 300,000. All these people are crazy, right? So I was able to come around and be like, man, those people are crazy. Like, I could pay you 300,000, but I'd have to pay you terms. And he's like, well, what are terms? And you kind of get into it that way. And it's like, well, I'm going to give you a down payment and I'm going to make monthly payments to you every month. And like you were the bank instead of me going and getting a loan from the bank, because it allows me to pay more for the property. And so I was able to buy that house for 300,000 because he sold it to me with only a $5,000 down payment and a 0% interest rate. Right. So if you understand that sort of thing and you're looking at properties as a long-term hold rather than just quick cash flipping, it just allows you to transact with more sellers. And I mean, those are some of the best, long-term deals. And that's how you build wealth ultimately, because I mean, wholesaling and flipping is amazing. But if you don't continue to do deals, that money stops coming in, right? But if you
Right.
can do one creative finance deal and that property pays you every month and you're gaining equity every month, because it's a 0% interest, I'm not paying any interest on it. So I'm gaining equity every single month that's being paid down by a renter. So it opens the door to a lot more opportunities when you can look at a property and you can look at a situation through more lenses than just a cash offer wholesale perspective.
Yeah. So, Nick, what have been some strategies you've used to really explain this to sellers? How have you been able to package something that you can put in front of the sellers and say, hey, we can't do this way, we can't go this way, but here's a really good way, and educating them on that creative finance?
Yeah, so I have some videos that I made that my team, because I don't really talk to a lot of the sellers anymore, so it's my team that's talking to them, and they'll send videos of me like explaining it, and it's just professionally shot videos of me talking about like examples like the one I just went through. Like, hey, you're probably talking to my team, you're probably interested in selling on creative finance. Let me like break it down for you, and it's basically just that. It's like, hey, the transaction is the same as if you were going to sell this property on the open market with a buyer that was going to live in it, right? The only difference is in the financing. The deed still transfers. You do not own the property. You are completely removed from any ownership responsibilities. It's just that instead of me making a payment to the bank every month, I make a payment to you. And because I don't have to pay all the interest and all the fees and all the stuff that a bank will, charge me, I can pay more for the property. And the less that I have to bring to closing, because obviously we're looking for low down payments, the less that I can bring to close, or the less that I have to bring to closing, the more that I can pay you over time. And there's certain tax benefits and ways that it actually benefits a seller to sell this way versus taking all of their cash up front. So yeah, we have some videos and then just explaining the process to them and trying to dumb it down as much as possible.
You mean, Nick, you don't want to explain it to a seller every time on the phone?
Well, that's what it was. I would have to be getting on the phone and explaining to sellers over and over and over and stuff. So yeah, we definitely found that was a good way to leverage it. Now my acquisition manager, he knows it like the back of his hand, so he handles it from now on. But we still use those videos from time to time.
Yeah, I'm ready at that point to make a video on the probate process, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's lots of videos already out there, right?
Oh yeah.
But it takes having those systems, and I think that's great. I think a lot of people don't leverage that opportunity with making those videos, so it's automated for their business, right? Like Nick's talking about, instead of like going over and over and over the same process, make a video on it. 3 to 5 minute video talking about that process. So when somebody later comes along and says, hey, what is creative financing? What is seller term? You actually have something that you can package and give them. And I think
Yep.
that's great advice to investors that are they don't have like a huge team, but they have like themselves and maybe a VA. And so it helps like scale yourself without having a huge team, right?
Absolutely.
Huge. Uh, Nick, any cool, crazy deals that you're working on now that you're looking forward to?
We got like 8 or 9 active wholesale deals, but none that are like, blowing it out of the water deals. They're all, good deals, but nothing that's crazy. We actually just closed one though. We had I run radio ads here in Tampa. So if you're listening to the radio, you'll hear me on there 5 times a day. But anyway, this guy, he called a few months ago now at this point, because we closed late August, so it's been about a month now. But it was a 8 property portfolio in Pasco County, and all of the properties were just absolutely beautiful. And it was unbelievable because this guy was a real estate broker for 20 years, and I actually went to his house. I met this guy. I went over there. He had the plaques on the walls, like the accolades from his career as a realtor and as a real estate broker. And he straight up said, he was like, look, I want it for this. I know it's worth X amount, but I'm looking for speed and convenience. And so give me an offer that you feel good about. I offered him. He said that the place was worth, or the portfolio was worth about 1.4 million, and I offered him like 900,000 or 950,000. No, I'm sorry, 850,000. We settled on 900,000, but we ended up selling it for almost 1.1 million. Yeah, so we had $163,000 assignment fee after double close, so after fees and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was crazy because that seller, it was the easiest negotiating in the world. It like fell into our lap. He called off of the radio. the radio ads. So it's not like we had to do all this follow up with him. He's like, hey, I got this. This is what I want for it. Or I'm sorry, he didn't even say this is what I want for it. This is what it's worth. Make me an offer. We made that offer. He accepted it. But it was crazy because this guy's a realtor, or he's a broker. So everybody always says, like, why would a seller ever sell to you at that price? Why would a seller ever do? Why wouldn't they just put it on the market? Why wouldn't they just hire a real estate agent? Well, this guy was a real estate broker himself, and I will quote him, when I gave him that offer, he was like, I like your offer, and it's a really good offer because I know that I could sell these properties for more on the market, but the speed, the convenience, and the certainty of your offer far outweighs the potential upside of putting that on the market. And I was like, dude, can I record that and like make that like my ringtone? Because that's all you deal with all the time with agents, with, you know, people that maybe aren't, they haven't experienced it. That's like one of their biggest questions. Why would a seller ever sell at that low of a price? Well, speed and convenience. And you hear it right from a broker himself. So that was a really cool deal.
Amazing. That's a big assignment fee right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. I mean, that's like business changing, right? I mean, that allows you guys to function and keep it going and build out more marketing, right? Build out more stuff, or maybe take home. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
It's all good.
Definitely gives you some options. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, this is really cool stuff, and I think what is so interesting is you're in the trenches every day, right? Like your team is, you're finding deals, you're working with Jared. I mean, there's always something that's coming up where maybe somebody at a meeting is talking about something like this. It's something that a lot of investors don't know how to get into, or maybe they're getting into it, but they need the right JVs, right? Or the right partnerships. And it takes that experience. It takes getting through those kinds of crazy, wacky probate and foreclosure and big assignment fee deals to get through that. So I think it's awesome hearing this and hearing it from you. It's great. And we'll make sure we keep all of your info and we're going to post it there. Nick, I have some questions for you that we ask at the show. I call them the signature questions. Okay. So for you, especially with your team, I think one of the hardest things right now with just finding people that want to work, that have work ethic, right? You know, how do you go about finding the best talent in the game?
So, man, I hired at least my US based employees. They're my friends, man. Like I hired my friends, the people I trust. Like I know people have always said, don't mix friends and business. I don't know, we're doing pretty well with it. So so my acquisition manager, obviously, like I told you, he's been my best friend since I was in 5th grade, 6th grade, or whatever it was. And then my disposition manager is actually one of my first connections that I made down here when I first started finding deals. He was working as a disposition manager for another company. I saw how he worked. He, you know, was very reliable. He sold a lot of my deals starting out and was very communicative. He did what he said, right? There's a lot of people in this business, and I mean, in business in general, that they very much overpromise and they underdeliver, right? So I want somebody that's going to shoot me straight, that's going to, you know, tell me how it is. Like, I don't want anything sugar-coated. Like, I want to be able to have real conversations, because the biggest problem, I think, in real estate, like, obviously there's tons of problems. There's things that go wrong. That's just the game, right? But things would be so much easier if people just like were transparent and communicative, right? So I look for people that are transparent and communicative. I look for people that have motivations outside of just work, like outside of just making money, right? They have something, that they have kids, they have a family, they, you know, they have maybe a little side business. One of my virtual assistants in the Philippines, him and his wife have a grocery store. I have another one that is a recording artist. She's like making albums, like stuff like that. So people that they're not just looking for a paycheck, right? They have motivations outside of work, to where it's not just, I'm just living to get a paycheck and pay my bills, right? They have ambitions and things that they want to do outside of work, and they're just good people, right? They're transparent, they're honest people. I've certainly gone through plenty of ones that I had learned lessons on. So, but every time that happens, you learn a lesson and you find a way to correct that going forward. So I've been able to build a really, really cool team since then.
And that's great. And I would say, just to add on to that, because all of that was fantastic. To add on, I would say finding the people that are also going to help build with you, right? Like that's really tough to find. Not just somebody that's just going to clock in, clock out, but people that are going to help think about how do we help level up the business together, right? Be in it together. And those are the team players. Those are the people that have that competitive edge, have that willingness to show up every day, and there's purpose behind it. And it's tough to find, but it's out there, right? Those things exist. And I think that's awesome for you guys that you've been able to really dial in on who you're looking for with those factors, right? That's huge. Nick, I don't know if you're gonna know, but I'm sure there's always one deal, right? There's always one deal that comes up. What is one project or deal that you most regret being a part of?
Oh man. Well, I just finished out, actually, good timing. I can finally talk about it, I guess. I just finished
Perfect.
I just finished a settlement for a lawsuit that that we finished up, and certainly wish that I would have stayed out of that one. And that's a good example for like I said, people that overpromise and underdeliver, right? People that they won't tell you what the truth is. They'll tell you what you want to hear, and they'll make everything sound good until it's not good. Yeah, trusting the wrong people, closing a deal when we probably shouldn't have, just trusting people that I shouldn't have trusted, and ended up having to make a settlement to avoid a lawsuit or avoid trial, all that sort of stuff. So you certainly learn. I mean, they say, if you've been in real estate and you haven't been sued, you're not doing enough deals yet. So I guess there's that. But yeah, certainly, if I had to pick one deal to regret, it would certainly be that one.
I'm assuming these weren't friends.
No, they were not friends. No, they were not friends. That's why I hire my friends, man. That's how I work with my friends, because people that, yeah, there's a lot of people that they walk the walk, but they don't, or they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, right?
Yep. Right.
So,
Sometimes there's empty promises, and you want the
yes,
people that are going to show up and actually like mean what they say and fulfill that, right?
and that's exactly like I said, like there's problems. Real estate has problems. It's part of the business. It's how do you communicate and how do you work together once those problems come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Awesome. Nick, if you could go back all the way to the beginning when you first started watching the YouTube channel, what would you do differently now that you know everything to date? What would you do? Would you do anything differently? Would you keep it the same?
I do the same thing that I did. I do the same exact thing that I did. And I was actually talking with some people this morning about that. They asked me that exact same question. And I told them I would do the same thing that I did. And one thing that I will give to your audience, one of the things that like completely changed the game for me when I was, because a lot of people, when you get into real estate, right, there's so many different ways to succeed that I think that's the biggest problem for a lot of people, is that they see all the opportunities and they never dial in on one of them, right? So a lot of people, they try to do all these different things at once and they never really gain traction in any of them. So one of the biggest books that I read that changed the game for me was The One Thing by Gary Keller. And essentially that book just says, if there's one thing that you could do that would make everything else that you need to do either irrelevant or easier, what is that, right? And for me, that was finding an opportunity, finding a motivated seller. Because when I moved to Tampa, I didn't know title companies, I didn't know contractors, I didn't know buyers, I didn't know anything, right? So, but I knew, hey, I've learned from Brent Daniels how to go find a seller. So I'm going to go find that, because I know once I do that, everything else will fall into place. So that was my one thing, right? But there's, in any business and anything that you're trying to do, you can narrow it down to one thing that you can do that will make everything else either irrelevant or much easier afterwards. So that is, I did that. I wouldn't change. That definitely worked out. So that's the advice that I would give to anybody else, is to pick that one thing and focus on it.
Yep, because it took that journey to get you where you are today. And who knows what it would be like, any differently if you went back. And all those experiences have made you who you are and your team. And the last time I heard about The One Thing was a Yellowbird event with Wally Conway, like 4-5 years ago. It's crazy. I remember that one concept. He talked about that. So thank you for sharing that. We love when people talk about books on the show, because it's just it's great, and a lot of people take that and they run with it. So awesome.
Yeah.
Nick, Why does Nick Kamrada love probate?
Because I already told you, man, because I get to work with you on probates.
I love it. I love
So
it.
I get to hang out with Al. No, so probates, I mean, first of all, probates can be really good deals because a lot of the time, especially in Florida, right? You'll have, I think we had in February, we had a group of sellers or a group of heirs, I guess. They had, dad died. They all were from New York, Chicago, all up north, whatever. Dad retired, moved down to Florida. Well, he passed away and they didn't know anything about Florida. They didn't want anything to do with the house. They're like, we're all busy, whatever. And this is the situation with most people that go into probate and they inherit a property. A lot of them, they sell because they have their own stuff going on and they don't want to deal with the property. So you're able to get really good deals, especially when it's out of state heirs that don't care. They've never seen the property, don't have any emotional attachment to it, anything like that. So you can get really smoking hot deals. We've gotten, I think the deal that I was talking about in February, we made like a 60, 70K assignment fee on those. But also it's like, there's situations like that, but then there's also probates like the one we were talking about earlier, where it was somebody that they were going through a situation where they were going through foreclosure and it was their primary home, right? And they didn't know where they were going to go because they didn't have any money. They were worried about getting foreclosed on. And we're able to help them in the sense of delaying the auction, finding the heir. And then I think actually by the time, I forgot to add this earlier, but because she was taking all these bogus offers and kind of blowing us off because our offer was too low, right? She ended up, her mortgage balance ballooned too much to where our offer was less than her our offer was less than her mortgage balance. So we had to then end up doing a novation on it. So it's like all these different things that come up, but when you're able to solve that problem for somebody, it's like I said before, it's just super rewarding.
Yeah. And I know a lot of investors love it because there's big spreads, right? There's not as great of attachment to that property because either they've all moved out, it's land, and or maybe they don't even know about it, right? Just it's a house that's just sitting or a mobile home that's just sitting, right?
Mhm.
And they make for great stories. And once you start doing it, and then you hear about somebody else that has gotten into it, you're like, hey, I've been through that before. It's a great opportunity to help work them through that situation, right? And put
Well,
them.
speaking of that, we're going through that probate right now where we were looking for an heir for like a year and a half or something like that. We finally ended up finding him, getting in touch with him, because so long story short for your audience, we had somebody that we locked up thinking that they were the heir to the property. We found out the deceased had a husband that nobody knew about, right? And so we end up finding this guy after a year and a half, and he he was like, man, if you could put 20,000 in my pocket, I'm over the moon, right? And the mortgage balance is like 90 grand and the house is worth like 300,000. So it's like, yes, you can get some really, really good deals. But then also that guy, he got a call, he's up in the panhandle and all of a sudden he gets a call. Hey, you own a house. You want
Yeah.
$20,000? Like he's super fired up. So it can be really a win-win situation. And like you said, there's a lot less emotional attachment because when you're dealing with people's primary homes, a lot of the time there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of drama that comes into it. But if you get a probate and inherited property, a lot of the time it can be cake.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you never know what direction it's really going to go. But, I've just seen a lot of people, even lately, love getting into them more than ever just because of the opportunity. And
100%.
and people are just so satisfied when they're like, hey, somebody's helping me. I didn't have this help before. They're giving me a solution that I didn't have. I just called an heir back today just to let her know that the probate got done just 2 hours before the show. And she was like almost in tears
Yeah.
because, they had nowhere to go before. And
Right.
it was, you make somebody's day sometimes when you do
Absolutely.
that.
And one of the things that I think is really cool about the opportunities that you give is like we can, as investors, we can go to homeowners and we have that whole thing for them. We have that we have it all packaged up. Hey, we got the probate attorney. We can help you. Nothing's going to come out of your pocket. We'll get all of this done. Then we'll buy the house. Like it's very, very, because a lot of people, your average homeowner, they have no idea what probate looks like, how much it is, stuff like that. So it's, when you have a homeowner that's looking at something like that can be a very daunting thing in their eyes, and then you come along and you can just solve their problems. Like, no, I got all that. I got the title company. I got the lawyer. We can get all that done. It's like they're just so happy, and that's the coolest thing.
Having a package deal like that, it's the best right
Yep.
there. Love it. What is next for Nick Kamrada?
Man, I think we're going to try to expand into Orlando. So right now we're only really doing deals in the Tampa Bay area, but I think we're going to start expanding into Orlando, doing some Central Florida deals, and just kind of keep continuing to try to expand and do more and more deals. And then I'm going to try to start pouring into our community more and start to do more stuff with that. So
Yes, I love that. Yes. And if anybody is in the Tampa or surrounding areas, you definitely got to check out Nick's group. Tons of value, tons of different investors that you wouldn't even see at a RIA meeting. Like, I mean, Nick's thing isn't a RIA. It is a solid group of investors, and there's different people that are doing deals all the time that you really want to connect with out there. So definitely check that out. Attend those meetings out there in Tampa. But Nick, this has been awesome, man. We get to do this again. Love seeing you in Sarasota, putting on the presentation, and I think, you know, with what you guys are doing and expanding and growing at the scale you guys are, and just keeping it lean, keeping those internal processes really tight. It's awesome to see. And when I get to work with you on these deals, I see it myself. So I see, you know, how you guys are working through it. So
thank you, man. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
Love it, Nick. Love it. As I do at the end of my show, I do a segment called Final Words, Final Thoughts. Anything that you really want to leave the audience with, you know, just take it home. Let them have it, right? Give them that last final word of impression that you can give them to help level up their business. So as I do final words, final thoughts, Nick Kamrada.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said before, I would just say, find what your passion is and stick with that, and find one strategy to really master. Because like I said before, there's a lot of people, they spend a lot of time doing a bunch of different things instead of just getting really good at one thing. And I actually have Brandon Turner from the Bigger Pockets podcast. He's not there anymore, but he used to be the host of the Bigger Pockets podcast. He has an analogy that I really like, right? He talks about, so imagine you're on one side of a ravine and on the other side is success, right? Success Island, whatever it is. So you want to get over to Success Island. What most people do is they'll start building a bridge here, and then they'll come back and they'll start building a bridge here, and they'll build another bridge over here, and they never get a bridge over to Success Island or whatever, right? So the people that are successful and will yell to you from Success Island because they've been there, hey, build one bridge all the way across, get that all the way across, and then come back and build another bridge. So I think that the main reason why I've been able to do what I've been able to do in just 4 years is because I've just had that absolute tunnel vision, right? I didn't have the shiny object syndrome. It's very, very easy to get. It's very easy, especially once you start doing deals. You're like, man, I need to start doing PPC. I need to start doing all of this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're not keeping any of the money because you're putting it all out into the marketing. So it's like, when you get a deal, if you haven't gotten your first deal, pick one marketing strategy and just crush that. Get really, really good at that, because it's absolutely inevitable that if you do that, every marketing channel works if you work it, right? So pick a marketing channel, find a deal, then double down, find another deal, and build a system out of that. And then once you've mastered that part of it, then build another marketing channel, right? Don't try to, and I'm telling you from, I was very good at tunnel vision for the beginning. And then once I did start scaling, I did start getting into PPC and stuff like that. But then after a little while, I realized, look, I'm putting a bunch of money into different stuff instead of doing what, you know, got me here. What got us here? So let's double down on cold calling, triple down on cold calling. And so that's been the backbone of our business. So like I said, pick one thing, get really good at it, then diversify from there.
I love that, Nick. And I've heard a lot of investors that will try to pivot out of doing wholesaling or single family, and they'll try to go to commercial and multifamily. And then all of a sudden they're just like, what am I doing? And they go right back to what was working. So that is great advice. And I think a lot more people should follow things like that, just because you want to have consistency. You want to be able to grow your business, and having that vision is going to be really key. So I love that, Nick. Nick, love seeing you, man. I love the background, and thank you for coming on the show and talking about these things, and can't wait till the next probate, man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it, brother. We'll keep in touch.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, everybody. It is a wrap on the Al Nicoletti Show. You heard it from Nick Kamrada. Nick is just doing these deals every day working with his team, and he is in the trenches. He's working to fine tune his business internally, externally, and you definitely want to get with the group. If you're in that Tampa or surrounding area in Tampa, Nick's group is great. We put it at the bottom of the screen. You don't want to miss it. And if you miss any of this, go back and rewind, go back, check it out. And of course, you can catch all the content on the Al Nicoletti Show. Scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen. You'll find anything on Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all the video podcast, whether you're listening in the car, no matter what, you'll find us there. And again, like I talked about in the beginning, check out the Jack's Ria Trade Show. You don't want to miss this event. It's going to be a fantastic event, and I'm emceeing the event, so it's going to be awesome. And we'll see you next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, another live show in the studio. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.